Happy present moment to you, world. And today I wanted to discuss about my journey with the sacred plant medicines and what a colorful ride it has been. And I would like to talk about the pros and the cons, if I would advise other people to engage with the medicines, whether I would partake again, and many things surrounding microdosing, high dosage, experimenting with combining different medicines, taking medicines in different situations. So in nighttime, daylight, sunlight, in water, different conditions. So I thought we'd start with the start of my journey, and that was with microdosing golden teacher, psilocybin, magic mushrooms. I had an interaction with an individual, and he offered to send me some as a gift. I'd never taken any form of psychedelic in my life before, although I'd experimented with recreational drugs, never psychedelics or so-called medicines. And this packet of 30 capsules sat on the side for months, and I was petrified. I was scared to partake. When I eventually built up the courage, the first day, I think I took 2 as opposed to 1, and I felt the effect straight away. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I then proceeded to finish the course. And my growth in that month was fast-tracked, to say the least. It really opened and started to rewrite the neural pathways, and my mind was open to, the power of these medicines and not to have fear. So I started to delve a little deeper and go into the 1 and 2 and 3 gram realms of personal journeys. And at this stage, I would always journey alone, and I was starting to build a relationship with the mushroom. And it led to me actually cultivating and growing my own. And then I started to delve a little deeper into perhaps 10 gram journeys where, there's different people that describe it in different ways, but there are levels. And on 10 grams, you don't really have to surrender because the medicine surrenders for you, although you still do have some kind of control. And I had some profound experiences, life-changing, and everything brought me back to love. It just brought me back to love. It brought me back to that heart center, that appreciation and gratitude. And because it was my newfound love, I was then not preaching, but sharing with friends and family. And I had the joy of sharing journeys with, my son and my daughters, with some amazing life-changing effects. So I have such fond memories, and I hold it in such high regard, psilocybin. So along this journey with psilocybin, initially, I was introduced to a sacred medicine called Changa. In the Western world, it's spelt with a C, Changa. In the more ancient traditional world, it's spelt with an X. Changa is a very, very powerful medicine. It is DMT based and similar to DMT, so it's smoked. Similar to DMT in the sense that if you inhale the correct or the right dosage or enough, once you pass a certain level, you blast off or break through. So my first time experiencing Changa was in a group setting with 5 individuals. The person that introduced me, my dear brother Jay, and a few other, excuse me, I've got hiccups, and a few other dear brothers, I think including my son. So we were in the woods in London one day, and it was arranged, and we had a fire going. We'd prepared the space, the area, we'd prepared ourselves, we'd fasted, and we started passing this medicine around the group. My first inhale, it was almost, I can only describe it as, it felt like I was going home and I went to another realm. And although I kind of traverse through Avatar-like lands in a movie, I was also able to be present and observe the current. And at this stage, it was more visual, emotional, and spiritual. But that was the start of something profound. So after that experience, I asked my brother for some of the Changa so that I could experience alone. I then, for months on end, I would go to the woods at night and light a fire and partake in this medicine. I don't know why. Some would, as an outsider, some would look on and say it was an addiction. In my eyes, it was a calling, and I see exactly why now. So I'm in the woods at nighttime, it's dark, and some of us do have a fear of the dark. It helped me to overcome that. But I was also in the dark taking a medicine that opens portals to dark and light. So I found that I was, especially in that environment, in a forest type setting, I was surrounded by the spirits of the forest, some of them sinister. What I came to see was they're always there. Those layers are always there. They just observe. And unless you invite them in or you've attracted them in, they can't affect you. You have to give them permission. That said, yeah, I did have some scary moments that I worked through. And then one night, it would have been about 2 o'clock in the morning, I'd sat with this medicine and it was like ping. So it's pitch black and it went ping and it was brighter than daylight. And I received a message and it was, you have broken through. We have given you the keys to the kingdom. This is your medicine to share. And I was just blown away. I couldn't believe it. And I was just in heightened states of bliss. And then obviously you have to integrate. And so I was integrating and I took some time off. And then I wanted to share the Changa with my family. So I shared with my daughter, again, profound experience. And my sister, again, another magical experience. And then I remember I was preparing to leave the UK to go and live abroad, to move to Portugal. And I felt called to do one final journey with Changa whilst in the UK. And it was at my sister's house, just in her apartment inside, which was a strange setting because normally I'd be called to do it in nature, and location does bear a key factor on your journey, but I felt called to do it in this space. And it was, in fact, a portal. So I intook the Changa, which is inhaled, smoked through a pipe. And I remember laying on the sofa and I left my body and was looking down on myself, which something I'd been used to. I then started to look down on the whole block of flats, the apartment block. I then went above that and was looking down on the whole world, and it was showing each individual literally plugged in. They were in like a bodysuit, like a spacesuit, plugged in, and it was showing mankind plugged into the matrix. And this journey, so Changa generally for most lasts from 10 minutes to 15, 20 minutes. I'd built a relationship with the medicine where my journeys were lasting 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, sometimes 2 hours. This journey was a couple of hours. And then what happened at the end, I was coming to and able to stand again. And I went and walked to the balcony just to like take in some fresh air. In doing so, it was like a phase 2 of the journey. And this vision came to me, and it was, you are here to help the healing of mankind. And whether it be with this medicine or with self, you are part of that journey. You've been chosen to do so. And I was like, at that point, I started to think that I was, God, Jesus. But again, I had to sit with that. But the message was clear, and the power in which that came to me, it was a very, very, very unique moment. So I then left the UK, and actually leaving the UK, I did a large, like a 15-gram mushroom journey on a ferry, a 24-hour ferry from the UK to Spain. And I remember that being I shouldn't have done it on a ferry, but I did it for a reason. And I went through a process, should we say. It caused quite a commotion on the ferry. Anyway, so I'm in Portugal now, and I'd kind of said, right, let's give the psychedelics a break. But I was growing the mushrooms, so I took my grow kits with me, and I had the mushrooms with me. And I also had some DMT, some 5-EMEO, but in a vape pen form. So I remember one day I was helping my friend renovate an old house. So we've got an old castle type building, and the blocks of stone that formed the walls were the size of a microwave oven. Not that I use them, but we're all aware of that size. And one of these boulders fell on my foot. And by all accounts, I broke one of my toes, and the foot was massive. The toe was black and blue. And so I said to my friend the next day, well, it was obvious I couldn't walk. I said, look, I'm going to sit and do some healing. I remember thinking the power of the medicine. And I got this DMT vape, and I sat in the sunlight, and I intook the medicine repeatedly for about an hour, and I channeled my energy to my foot. I watched my foot transform. I do have before and after photos, if anybody wants confirmation. But the next day I could walk, the black and blue subsided. It was clear that whatever had taken place that day, which I am I have an inner knowing that it was the sunlight, the medicine, and my intention that had aided that healing process. So I'm developing a closer relationship with the medicines, but at the same time, still respectful. I never took them recreationally or for a laugh. And somebody came to visit me in Portugal and they wanted to journey. So I'd been facilitating small groups, 2 and 3 and 4 people, or one-on-one sessions. And they wanted to journey with me with Changa. And our first journey had been a magical healing experience whereby it was a female, a woman, and this is absolutely mind-blowing. So basically during the journey, it was for her, but I intook some of the medicine just to align and be on the same wavelength. After about 30 minutes of holding space and observing, I said, look, I don't know what's going on, but I feel called to tether with you. I said, I'm not being sexual, but can I touch your leg? And she said, no, if that's what you feel to do. So I made contact with her leg and held her leg. And I said, nah, something's not right. Can I move my hands to your stomach area? So I held her stomach area, her belly. In that moment, the most obscure thing happened that it continues to blow my mind. So her belly became distended and something started to kick me. And I looked at her and she looked at me and we could hear energy moving, feel energy moving and this kicking. I said, you're pregnant. She said, no, I haven't had sex for however long. But she said, no, I'm not pregnant. There's no way. And I was like, there's a baby kicking me. And she's like, I know. And I was like, okay, the calling is to remain. So I was holding and concentrating. And then there was this like rush of energy and this release where I had to ground because I'd taken on some energy. And the minute I stood up and grounded and detached from that individual, this clarity entered the room. The elephant left the room. There was this weight lifted and it became bright. And she was just like, wow. I was just like, wow, what just happened? She broke down in tears. I held her and we digressed on what had happened. And she'd said that she'd had some trauma in the past and she'd had, I think, a miscarriage or an abortion. And she'd never told the father. I think it was an abortion, and she'd never told the father, and she'd always held it against herself. She'd never let it go. And she felt like in that moment she had released that trauma and that energy and let it go. So that was the start of this so-called, this journey with this individual, which was so powerful, and she kind of wanted to go further. So we decided to journey together on a beach in Portugal as therapy. Now, in doing so, again, it was for her. So I let her go in and I held space. Again, a very, very interesting situation. And then at the end, she prompted me and I was like, I don't really feel a need to. I should have stuck with my gut instinct. I decided to partake of the medicine after she had finished. And I inhaled the medicine and instantly regretted it. So I had this death-like feeling, and there were like invisible arrows coming at me and like spiking me in my throat. And it was like, she's got you. And I was like, what? And I'm there. And I felt a need to detach from this individual. So I got up and started to move away. And this individual was sat there in a yoga type, I can't recreate the pose, but a yoga type position, but in a mantra pose, which was almost demonic. And I researched the pose, and it was calling in dark energy. So what happened to me in this instance was I started to dance. And it's funny because I'm quite a static person, and I was dancing like uncontrollably. It was like a spirit had entered me. And I looked at her and I was like, what are you doing? And she was just continuing in her pose. And I was like, this is crazy. I hadn't at this stage learned how to protect myself. So I was like, I was called to say, I am, I am, I am. And I said it louder than that. And I was banging my chest. And in that moment, the spirit left. And I felt this release. And I had to take some time out alone to like integrate. And afterwards I confronted her and I said, you know, what on earth was going on? And she denied all knowledge of any. And I firmly believe that perhaps she didn't know what she was invoking or what was going on. But it was clear that there was something sinister trying to take over or control or manipulate me for whatever reason. And that scared me and put me off. And so I had a break. And then I continued perhaps the odd, small mushroom journey here and there, and was growing my consciousness and expanding and releasing old trauma. I then traveled to Mexico, and it's almost like the medicine followed me around the world. I ended up at a random ceremony, a breathwork ceremony, and in a beautiful resort in Tulum, a private beach. And at the end of the ceremony, the guy, the shaman, should we say, said, does anyone want to stay on for the next ceremony? And I was with a friend of mine, and I said, oh, what's the next ceremony? He said, oh, it's Changa. I said, oh my, this is not real. And the guy that I was with, I was like, brother, you've got to try this. But in trying it, also that meant that I had to perhaps be there. And that night I intook, but I held my space and I just observed. And it was that day that I learned to ride above the medicine. So that day I was observing, it was a group of like 20 people, and I was observing dark entities and very strange energy going on, a lot of release. And it was interesting to observe. And I just said, I want to hold space. And that was it. And my friend went in and had a profound journey. So I'm in Mexico. Changa has found me again. And I was like, wow, this thing is like, this medicine is following me around the world. And then it started ringing in my ears that I'd actually been called to share it. So I had a beautiful home with a garden and a swimming pool in Mexico. And I was like, I actually have a beautiful space, and it was a sacred space. The land was a portal where I could hold my own ceremonies. So I started to hold my own Changa ceremonies, where I think my first one, I was blown away. There was like 20 people. And I I would invite two musicians to hold the musical space. I would invite a female to hold the feminine space, and perhaps another male counterpart to keep the balance and assist. And all of a sudden, I'm working as a shaman in Mexico, facilitating these ceremonies, healing journeys, and then being called to do one-on-one individual healing sessions, again with, it seemed to be a trend that at the end of a one-on-one healing session, I would be called to tether with an individual, like I'd be guided to hold a body part, whether it be a hand or a foot or the torso or the back, to enable and facilitate and be a conduit for a release. And I had people saying, you know, you've healed my broken ankle, you've healed my infertility, you've healed this, you've healed that. And it was very fast track. And it was a whirlwind moment. But also I was very honored. And in that time frame, I was called and given the name of Jaguar, the Jaguar spirit. Is that is the space that I held, the bridge that I was able to provide from dark to light, to be able to link both worlds and help people release their trauma, etc., etc. So it was a very responsible and honorable position to be in. And I did respect it and I did hold it in high regard, but it did go to my head. I did become quite egotistical from it. And I reflect, and yeah, it's humbling to be able to reflect and then now observe the situation. So I continued on my personal journey with psilocybin at this point, and I've been watching some information on high dosage psilocybin journeys. And there's a professor called Baba Kalindi I. He's all over YouTube. And the first time I saw one of his videos about high dosage psilocybin, it blew my mind. We've all heard of ayahuasca, iboka. And the fact that you could take 30 or 50 grams of mushrooms and have even a deeper journey than ayahuasca and iboka was like, wow. And there's a phrase or two that comes to mind. Kalindi I, God rest his soul, he used to say, it's a journey of the alone into the unknown. To step into the ocean, not to paddle in the sea, but to go out into the deep where there is no horizon. And again, at such high levels, your level of surrender doesn't matter so much, because you enter the realms of the praying mantises and of the anime and of the dragons and of the gods and of the legends. You leave the planet. So I decided to embark on this 30-gram dosage, and perhaps I should do a whole video on that. And I did have a sitter, and I got them to observe, take notes, and record some of the journey. So that might be interesting to share at some point. But in this journey, yeah, it changed my life. That was a leave the planet moment, and you meet God. But do you know why you meet God? It's because you meet yourself. And what that journey really showed me was that all the medicines, all of them, all they do is alter your frequency, your state of being via your breathing. They control your breathing to take you to those psychedelic states, to take you to those inner places. And that is what I like to expand the knowledge of to the world, that plant medicine is a route, yes, but we can get there through correct breathing also. It's less harsh. There are less side effects. There is less integration. All said and done, you know, the only reason I would never probably take psychedelics again in my life, and never say never, is because the last 5 times I attempted to take anything, it had zero effect. And the message was, your work is done with the medicines. You've learnt, you've mastered, you've learnt the frequencies. We've shown you everything. And again, I could choose to continue to work with them. And at some point, and in some situations, maybe I would. But I am finding different ways to make these breakthroughs in a highly intelligent, advanced way going forward, which I will be sharing with the world. But yes, for some people, you know, I always look at myself as a guinea pig, an experiment, a pioneer, and I am prepared to go where no one else is prepared to go to bring back the messages. So following the 30 gram, I took some time off again to integrate. And then I was called to experiment with Changa, but in different settings. So in daylight, moonlight, in water, different locations. Taking any plant medicine in a body of water, you will have a completely different experience. What happens is the water is a channel and a conduit anyway, but when you open yourself to the spirit of the water, you receive the codes of the water. And I had some profound mushroom and Changa journeys in the sea, in cenotes, even in a swimming pool. But if you remain in water for 2 or 3 hours whilst under the altered state, you receive mind-blowing information and codes from the water. And it was a huge part of my healing. And then one day we did a mix, me and a brother that was on this experiment of psilocybin, Changa, and DMT whilst in a swimming pool. It wasn't taken recreationally. It was taken to be guinea pigs, to be experiments. That day was probably the most profound day of my life. There's been many profound days of my life, but this day, it was like my head blew. And that was the day I would say my crown chakra fully opened. This is about 3 years ago. And I remember walking around, I was pacing up and down, just in pure bliss, and I just couldn't believe it. I had broken through to like heaven as a state of mind. It was absolutely mind-blowing. And no doubt, you know, my life changed forever from that day forward. And then I continued to experiment with Changa and marijuana. The thing is with people, we're very controlled and we do things guided. When we use free will, and not to be irresponsible, but when you try different things, you unlock different doors. So again, smoking Changa with marijuana, completely different effect. It takes you to a different frequency. And what I realized with all of this experimenting, I was just experiencing layer after layer, like a radio dial, tune, bandwidth after bandwidth of different frequencies. And there's a saying that you have to experience it to know it. And then once you know it, you have experienced the full spectrum. Your understanding of life is expanded. You come to know and you come to experience everything. And, I'm so grateful for my journey. And it involved, I've done it with the synthetics, the LSDs, and, I've smoked marijuana in ceremony settings where you have like psychedelic type plant medicine experiences. I've done ayahuasca, but only in small doses, and peyote. Hands down, but my relationship is with Changa. And again, another journey, this, like the Changa gods, if you like. One day I was in my home and I journeyed, and this message came through. It was daylight anyway, but it lit up, like illuminated 1,000 times. And it was like, this is the sanctuary of light. You are the sanctuary of light. This is your medicine. Share it. And I continue to do so. And, I used it to help people that were possessed with entities and demons. I was a part of expelling demons, which was such a powerful and mind-opening experience to be part of, with many individuals and even my own son. And I realized my power in doing so was only because I've been able to do it with myself. I've been able to expel my own demons. I think I'm going to leave it there for today, but I would like to finish with a brief. And as I digress, plant medicine is a gift. It is powerful. Some of us have a calling. Some of us have a calling to experiment, to clear our own trauma. Some of us have a calling to qualify with the medicines to be able to serve others. Let me tell you, to qualify and be initiated by a medicine, it's not about going to some fancy paid for community where you pay thousands of dollars and you're given a certificate. You have to do the work alone. The medicine has to accept you. Some people are called just to have a gentle healing journey. Some people are called just to play with them recreationally. To me, that's abuse. That's fine, each to their own. I'm sure it is doing something positive. I would always say, be mindful. Be mindful of the location in which you take it. Be mindful of the music played whilst you are consuming. Be mindful of the people that are around you, whether they are friends or shamans. Being alone with medicine is a sure way to protect your energy with zero outside influence. Like alone in nature, for me, would be the best. But you have to have that courage and that bravery. It's also about your level of surrender. The medicine, unless you're going to go to the very high dosages, the medicine will only give you the healing based on the level that you are willing to surrender. For people just starting out in the medicine world, I'm not against it. I'm not an advocate for it. I'm in the middle. Microdosing is a nice, gentle introduction, and it will show you what you'll be guided from there. All of the medicines I have so much respect and love and a connection with, and I give thanks and gratitude to them and for them. But there comes a point Medicine is for sick people. When we are no longer sick, we no longer require the medicine. And personally, I know that I don't need the medicine anymore. And where my journey goes from here, I'm not quite sure. But for now, I abstain purely because it serves me no benefit. And if a situation came about where I was called to share it, I would think about it very, very, very carefully. I hope this episode has been enjoyable and insightful for you, and I could share much more and many more individual profound journeys on the subject, which I will do maybe in an interview setting or different circumstances another time. Thank you for tuning in, and I look forward to sharing the next video with you soon.